Hey, let's have a quick chat about SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard, 2015 nonfiction work all about, yes, ancient Rome, going from sort of the mythic founding of ancient Rome all the way to its 2012 CE when Emperor Caracalla made every single free inhabitant of Rome, of Roman Empire, a full Roman citizen. And as Mary Beard points out in her introduction, this is just happens to be where she's decided that the story ends. Various other historians take different opinions on where the story ends, where we could draw the line. And this is definitely a work of history that I really enjoy this kind of work of history because Mary Beard really includes you, the reader, in this is construction. We are constructing a story, an interpretation of what the hell happened here. Much, just the individual level of how the historian will read the stuff to, the times that things are done in. This has much more of a focus on women in the Roman Empire. This has a much more of a focus on the victims of a Roman conquest. Um, it is a book she very much strongly believes that Rome, how thinking about Rome, having a conversation with what we know about Rome is something very valuable that needs to happen for different generations. But she includes you in that conversation, saying this is why I think this. She is very much an opinionated voice. I like that also in my historians, not the, oh, I'm going to show you something that's somehow objective. No, I have opinions, I have biases, I have my own thoughts, I have my own opinions on, like, Cicero comes up a lot. The great famous orator, also the fellow who was in charge when the Catiline conspiracy happens and dealt with it very brutally and kind of in a way that was without without legality and had to kind of flee from it. She's got opinions about Cicero, which might differ from someone else who was looking at it. You can see this is like, this is a Britain post their own empire, with a lot more criticism about it versus maybe a Brit who was writing this when the British Empire was modeling itself, really admired the Roman Empire. And it's like, yes, we also want to be conquerors. She is someone who is fascinated by it, intrigued by it, but she doesn't necessarily take everything that they do as wonderful. So yeah, she was born in 1955, professor of classics at the University of Cambridge and a fellow at Nathan College. She's classics editor of the Times Literary Supplement, and author of a blog. Frequent media appearances. I think I know her primarily from one of her BBC, I assume BBC shows where she's talking about Rome and has this kind of quirky, kind of needly kind of personality, which, very much you don't think of this being a kind of a stuffy classics person. This is somebody who's like, oh, this is what they're doing, getting up to naughty business here, kind of that kind of a personality. But I really respect her for her historiography. That she's really saying, like, look, I'm looking at this from a different way. There's the reason I'm writing this book is I think that this stuff should be looked at differently. And it starts with just the structure of this book. Most books like this would start off with the mythic beginnings of Rome. They might even kind of try and kind of make believe it's got any base in fact. She does not do that when we do finally get to it. No, she jumps well ahead to the Catiline conspiracy, which is very much established Rome, and there is skullduggery of some sort. We don't actually know what actually happened there in an unbiased way because, as I said, Cicero was the main person in charge, and he because of him also being a great writer, his is basically the main source that survives his story. And she is very appropriately kind of very skeptical of his story, especially because he charged this faction with trying to take over Rome, and had them all arrested and had them all executed without trial. And this is something that we know from the sources, that he had to post the event, had to kind of take off himself, not to get caught up in legal stuff, get his own execution happen. He got out of town because there was heat on him, but we don't know the particulars because he's the only source. And Mary Beard does a really good job throughout this book of saying, like, what are our sources? How much information do we have? It's not a surprise that there's a little segment of Roman history which is like, from kind of, Julius Caesar to kind of like Augustus in there, where we have a ton of history because we have the best records of, and then suddenly things tail off again, and we don't have as much kind of detailed documents on what's going on. So she does a really good job of showing history, of building her own history and showing their notes, showing her work, which I really appreciate. I think another reader of history who might be more interested in, I just want a good story, and is happy when there's speculation that's kind of passed off as actual fact. It's like, I get so tired of looking at stuff and saying like perhaps or seems or maybe, all the weasel words that get put into histories, which I find very frustrating because it's like, okay, you're making guesses here, but you're not showing me how you're making your guesses, and it leaves me as a reader out in the dark. Mary Beard does not do that with this book. I mean, and it's very much, using as much of kind of the modern evidence that she can find, showing you how you can find weird bits of evidence or weird ways of kind of trying to confirm what authors at the time were writing, and at a time when what was being written for propaganda purposes, was being written dramatically to, you inflate the always numbers are inflated of armies and stuff like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book because of you got into the kind of the niggly bits of history, and her efforts to, like, trying to figure out what a poor person or what a female was doing at this time, who wasn't at the very high point of, if you're not at the top of the structure, nothing gets recorded about you. Nothing gets preserved. It's people like Cicero, Julius Caesar, Augustus, indirectly from the people around him. Actually, no. Actually, Augustus himself gets to leave words. And how does he get to leave words? It is his final testament gets cast in bronze, but that probably got melted down, but it was spread all over the empire in various kind of statuaries, of stone statuaries. So there's some place in Turkey where they find his final words and it's in three different, it's in Greek, Latin, and probably Turkish or whatever. So, and between the three, you can piece together his final testimony. But that is like the very top guy, and even then, you have to kind of reach out and try and reconstruct stuff to get the actual words. It's the harsh editor of history of how much little will get left behind. Like all our digital stuff, you have to assume will be poof in about 100 years, will not have the longevity of something put into stone. And how vanishingly small would the information from that be if it actually survived. So yeah, I really enjoyed this work by Mary Beard. I'd be interested in reading more about her, and also reading more books about the Roman Empire from various different points of view. I do think that yeah, and older points of view, but also keeping a book like this is useful in that it really does point out, okay, there's like Edward Gibbon is coming from a particular point of view, idiosyncratic as it is, but a particular time and place as a Englishman in the English Empire heights. What he's saying versus what Mary Beard is saying, or what someone else might say. All the slavery, all the just all the misogyny of the time, but also just kind of like going like, okay, but we also shouldn't kind of paint things so simplistically, like that the Romans were thugs and the Greeks were high intellectuals. It's like some of the most harshest critics of the Roman Empire were actually writers and thinkers of that very time, saying saying, you know, who were on the ground and could actually observe this stuff and were the most incisive critics of this amazing civilization. A civilization that brought great wealth to some people, and you know, death and destitution. The desolation of peace is what one of those critics called the Roman Pax Romana of 1,000 years of Roman rule. What did it bring? The desolation of peace too. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.